Herald page, and we were trying to push these short sales, and we were kind of ahead of the market in the sense that the banks weren't really organized back then, so they weren't approving a lot of these short sales. Now it seems that they're organized, their mitigation departments are bigger, and they are approving a lot of these short sales, but a lot of realtors find themselves tainted by the bad experiences of the past and don't want to take these short sales on anymore, because those of us who were around in 2007, 2008, 2009 took on some of these short sales and found that we couldn't close them within, let's say, a year period, right? So a lot of them, I find a lot of realtors would come to me and say, Jose, you know what, I don't even want to touch a short sale, you know? I'm going to argue to you guys that short sales are actually easier than regular sales. Because you know that the sale of a property is not done when you find a buyer. The sale of a property is done when you sit down with the owner and you get the listing and you get it at fair market value. That's when the property is sold. I would always think when I would go on listing presentations that if I could get that seller to give me that listing at fair market value, I could always find a buyer. But if I took that overpriced listing, or he didn't accept the 6% commission that we were charging, or maybe the amount of money that he was netting off the sale wasn't enough, they wouldn't sign that listing agreement, right? So when we were on a regular listing presentation, we would find that one of the objections was, how much is your commission? Another objection could be, how much am I netting from the sale of this property? Well, guess what? With short sales, those two major objections that realtors always had to deal with are now out the window. They don't ask us what our commission is anymore because they're not really paying our commission anymore. And they don't ask what they're netting because they know they're not netting a dollar. Now, we do have to learn how to set expectations, and I agree with you, Lydia. You can't try to get the listing agreement. I know it's tempting, but you can't try to get the listing agreement by telling them, hey, you know what, banks are giving incentives and you might be able to walk out of this with $35,000 plus a $3,000. You know, you don't want to do that. I mean, one of the classic things that I learned when I was learning about sales is you set expectations and then you exceed them, not vice versa, right? So if you set the expectations that high, they're going to be disappointed if you're not able to deliver. So that's one of the things that we always want to do. We want to do a lot of the research on the property up front. And part of that research is market value. We want to be able to set the property at market value. We want to be able to use all these wonderful tools online and actually be able to know if there are any existing liens or judgments against the property, as Lydia mentioned. But we also want to be able to talk to the seller. One of the things that our firm does is we have a little questionnaire that we have, because you could forget things and people are telling you their story and you could get caught up in the sales cycle. So it's important to have kind of like a cheat sheet where you actually are able to go through questions that you want to ask them. And you want to get all the information that you can up front. I even push for the fact that you should try to get financial documents up front. And I know that sometimes you might have to later on go back and get updated bank statements and pay stubs. But I'd rather put that burden on the seller right there and then to gauge not whether just they're going to qualify for the short sale, but to actually gauge their motivation, because these deals take a very long time. So if the seller's not willing to cooperate the day that they're signing the listing agreement, you know, what's going to happen 2, 3, 4 months down the line when they might have to come up with a cash contribution, or they might have to accept a short sale that has, you know, that doesn't waive the deficiency, etc., etc. So I try to get as much information on the property, as much documentation from the buyer, and I always try to spend a lot of time on the market value. That's the first tip that I wanted to share with you. Another tip that I want to share with you guys has to do with BPOs. And you have to attend the site surveys that these agents, or in some cases now appraisers, are performing, and you have to go with research that you provide them with.